The coasters at Six Flags Fiesta Texas are pretty decent, but as coaster enthusiasts, we love to complain and nitpick, so here's how to improve every coaster at Fiesta Texas. I want this video to be somewhat grounded in reality, so here are the rules for this video. Every improvement has to be within reason, so not every coaster can be a giga, and I'm actually going to limit it so I can only increase one coaster's max height. I can only add one major element like an inversion or two smaller elements like airtime hills and helixes, and finally, I have to stay within the plot of land that the ride currently stands on. So now that we have the boring stuff out of the way, let's get into the improvements. It's hard to think of an improvement for 4D free spins because they are basically just flat rides on wheels. The biggest improvement I can think of is that on the lift hill, if you're in the second row, you kind of get pointed at the sun, which can be pretty unpleasant on a sunny day, so I'd improve the coaster by fixing that issue. Tear it out. But in all seriousness, the only real improvement that can be made to a boomerang is getting better trains, and it looks like that's happening, which is actually really cool. This ride's actually really solid. There's two possible improvements that I could think for this one. One of those would be to add 10 or 20 feet to the coaster's max height, and the other would be to add another airtime hill after the helix. Of the two, I think adding additional height would be the biggest improvement, so that's what I'm gonna go with here. This is your run-of-the-mill Batman clone, and in this case, the layout does not need any improvements, and there isn't much rattle to it. But the ride is on a super flat plot of land with barely any trees, so adding some landscaping in, like on Batman at Six Flags Great America, would help this coaster a lot and make the experience just a ton better. This coaster is dang near perfect, but if I'm gonna nitpick, that slow section on the quarry wall could use a little change. I think replacing that second overbank turn with a slow hangtime filled 0G roll or heartline roll would make that section a lot better. But as I said, the coaster is pretty much perfect, so this is just a nitpick. This is gonna be another nitpick, but the Wild Mouse section after the first drop kinda rubs me the wrong way. It's not bad, I understand it's there to get the car spinning, but it's kinda hit or miss in that regard. It's also a little bit of a letdown after that first drop, so to improve Pandemonium, I would make the first drop connect to the beginning of the helix. Because this coaster is so tight, I can't really think of anything that would stay on its current footprint, and because of that, I'm gonna improve it by adding a small airtime hill to the straight track where the mid-course brake run used to be. This is the best aero mine train that I have ever ridden, and I'd improve this one by adding an airtime hill to the end. You get a bunch of speed, and then the ride just kinda ends, so having one more good pop of airtime would end the ride off in a really solid way. This is a kiddie coaster, so there isn't really any substantial improvements that are possible. Maybe add another lap to it, but other than that, there's not really any ways to improve it. This is the best B&M floorless coaster, but the ending is a little weak. I would take out the last two corkscrews and the turns that connect to them and replace it with a forceful helix into the brakes. It might not be the most memorable finale, but it would be different and it would make it stand out from the other B&M floorlesses. The layout on this coaster is amazing, but the restraints are actually awful. They were so unpleasant that my shoulders hurt for 3 days after riding this coaster. It boggles my mind how a ride can open up with restraints this bad. They are genuinely ride-ruiningly terrible. And to hear my full thoughts on Wonder Woman, my review of it is right there.